A Nigerian boutique owner armed with a gardening shovel faced down Seoul's most feared mafia boss. And instead of killing her, he became obsessed. When his enemies came for her, he burned their empire to ash. When she demanded the truth, he gave her a warning that changed everything. "If I start, I won't be able to stop." She looked him in the eyes and said, "Then don't." This is the story of a woman who turned into a monster human, and the mafia boss who would destroy the world to keep her. If this dangerous obsession has you hooked, smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't believe how intense this gets when the Russian Bratva arrives, when Min Jun's past explodes into their present, and when Tina must choose between safety and the most dangerous love of her life. Will they survive the war they've started? Subscribe to find out. Seoul's Itaewon district in 2024 is a collision of cultures: Nigerian restaurants next to Korean BBQ, African fabric shops beside K-pop merchandise stores, a neighborhood where diversity thrives and outsiders become family. In this vibrant chaos, Tina Johnson built something extraordinary. Afro Soul Boutique, a fashion store celebrating African and Korean fusion designs that had become a destination for Seoul's trendsetters. At 27, Tina had transformed herself from a Lagos girl with big dreams into a successful entrepreneur who spoke fluent Korean, negotiated with tough suppliers, and refused to let anyone, Korean or otherwise, underestimate her. She was known in Itaewon for three things: her stunning Ankara Korean fusion designs, her sharp wit that could cut through steel, and her absolute fearlessness. That fearlessness was about to be tested. It was 11 p.m. on a Thursday when Tina heard the crash on her rooftop garden. She'd been closing the boutique, counting the day's earnings, when the sound of her rooftop door being smashed open echoed through the building. Her first thought was burglars. Her second thought was that she needed a weapon. She grabbed the gardening shovel she kept for her rooftop plants and climbed the stairs, her heart pounding, but her resolve absolute. This was her building, her sanctuary, and whoever was up there was about to learn that Tina Johnson didn't back down from anyone. What she found on her rooftop changed everything. A man lay collapsed near her tomato plants, blood pooling beneath him, his expensive suit torn and dirt-streaked. He was Korean, devastatingly handsome, even in his current state, with sharp features and dark hair matted with sweat. Most striking were his eyes, dark, dangerous, and currently fixed on her with an intensity that should have terrified her. "Don't move," Tina said, raising her shovel like a baseball bat. "I've called the police." She hadn't, but he didn't need to know that. The man's lips curved into something that might have been a smile if it wasn't twisted with pain. "No, you haven't." "Excuse me? If you'd called the police, you wouldn't be up here alone with a shovel." His Korean was perfect, his voice deep and controlled despite the obvious agony. "You're either very brave or very stupid." "I'm Nigerian," Tina replied, her grip on the shovel not wavering. "We don't do stupid. Now who are you? And why are you bleeding on my tomatoes?" What Tina didn't know was that she was currently threatening Min Jun Lee, the man Seoul's underworld called the Ice King, a mafia boss so feared that grown men refused to speak his name aloud. The man who controlled half of Gangnam's illegal operations, who'd built an empire on calculated violence and emotional detachment, who hadn't felt genuine emotion in over a decade. And he was completely, utterly fascinated by the woman threatening him with gardening equipment. "I need your help," Min Jun said, his control starting to slip as blood loss took its toll. "I'll pay whatever you want. Just don't let me die on your rooftop. It would be embarrassing." Tina looked at this bleeding, arrogant stranger and made a decision that would change her life forever. "Fine, but you're explaining everything. And if you try anything, I'm using this shovel exactly where it'll hurt most. Understood?" Minjun looked up at this fearless woman silhouetted against Seoul's night sky and felt something he hadn't experienced in years: genuine interest. "Understood," he said. Neither of them knew it yet, but this rooftop encounter was the beginning of an obsession that would consume them both, ignite a gang war, and prove that sometimes the most dangerous thing in the world isn't a mafia boss's power, it's falling in love with someone who makes you want to be human again. But what happened when Tina discovered who she'd really saved? And could a Nigerian entrepreneur and Korea's most dangerous criminal ever find common ground? Or would their worlds destroy them both? The shovel was surprisingly heavy in Tina's hands as she climbed the stairs to her rooftop garden. Below, Seoul's Itaewon district buzzed with Thursday night energy, expats stumbling between bars, street vendors calling out in multiple languages, the beautiful chaos of a neighborhood where cultures collided and somehow created harmony. Up here, Tina had built her sanctuary. Tomato plants in repurposed kimchi containers, herbs she used for cooking, a small seating area where she drank morning coffee before the boutique opened. This was her peace, her escape from the demanding world of fashion retail and the constant navigation of being a black woman in Korea. And someone had just crashed through her door and was bleeding all over it. The man lay near her tomatoes. His expensive suit, she recognized Tom Ford when she saw it, torn and stained dark with blood. He was Korean, probably early 30s, with the kind of face that belonged in K-dramas: sharp jawline, intense eyes, hair that looked deliberately styled even in its current disheveled state. Blood seeped from a wound in his shoulder, but he was conscious, alert, and currently staring at her with an expression that suggested he found her more interesting than his own potential death. "Don't move," Tina said, raising her shovel. "I've called the police." She absolutely had not, but men didn't need to know that. His lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, more like acknowledgement of a game well played. "No, you haven't." His voice was deep, controlled despite obvious pain, and his Korean was soul-accented, educated. "If you'd called the police, you wouldn't be up here alone with a shovel. You're either very brave or very stupid." Tina bristled. "I'm Nigerian. We don't do stupid. Now who are you and why are you bleeding on my tomatoes? Those are heirloom Cherokee purples. Do you know how hard those are to grow in Seoul?" Now he definitely smiled, though it looked like it cost him. "I apologize to your tomatoes, He stopped, seeming to reconsider. "Someone who needs help. I'll pay. Name your price." "My price for what? Harboring a criminal? Because that suit says money, but that bullet wound says poor life choices." "It was a knife, actually." "Oh, well, that makes it so much better." Tina lowered the shovel slightly, her practical side warring with her self-preservation instincts. The man was clearly dangerous. Everything about him screamed it, from his controlled movements despite injury to the way he tracked her every gesture. But he was also bleeding out on her rooftop, and Tina had never been good at watching people suffer. "Fine," she said, making a decision she'd probably regret. "But you're explaining everything. And if you try anything, I'm using this shovel exactly where it'll hurt most. My aunt taught me 12 different ways to incapacitate a man. Understood?" "Understood." He tried to sit up, failed, and grimaced. "You have medical supplies?" "I have a first aid kit for boutique emergencies." I don't know if mafia boss bleeding out counts, but we'll improvise. She didn't see him tense at mafia boss, but something shifted in his expression. Surprise, perhaps, or respect. 15 minutes later, Tina had dragged him into her apartment above the boutique, stripped his shirt off with zero ceremony, and was cleaning the knife wound with the kind of efficient brutality that suggested she'd done this before. "You've done this before," Min-jun observed, watching her work with undisguised fascination. "Lagos isn't exactly peaceful. My brother got into fights. I learned." She doused the wound with antiseptic, and he didn't even flinch. "You're either very tough or very stupid. Wait, I already used that line. I'm very motivated not to show weakness. In front of a woman with a first aid kit? Your masculinity is showing." Min-jun laughed, actually laughed, and something in his chest cracked open. When was the last time someone had made him laugh? When was the last time someone had treated him like a regular person instead of the Ice King of Gangnam? "What's your name?" he asked as she began stitching. "Tina. Tina Johnson. And before you ask, yes, I'm Nigerian. Yes, I've been here 5 years. Yes, I speak Korean. No, I'm not teaching English. I own the boutique downstairs. Your turn." Min-jun considered lying, considered giving her a false name, disappearing after tonight, protecting her from the disaster that was his life. But looking at this fearless woman stitching his wound while lecturing him about heirloom tomatoes, he found he couldn't. Min-jun. Min-jun Lee. Tina's hands didn't falter, which meant the name meant nothing to her. Good. She had no idea who he was, what he did, the blood on his hands that went far deeper than tonight's wound. "Well, Min-jun Lee, you're lucky. The knife missed anything major. You'll be sore for weeks, but you'll live." She tied off the final stitch with professional efficiency. "Now, are you going to tell me why someone was trying to kill you, or do I have to guess? Jealous husband? Business deal gone wrong? Secret superhero identity?" Min-jun looked at her, really looked at her. She was beautiful in an unconventional way. Dark skin that seemed to glow in the apartment's soft lighting, natural hair pulled back in a wrap, expressive eyes that held intelligence and humor. She wore a boutique outfit that mixed African prints with Korean tailoring, and she moved with the confidence of someone who knew exactly who she was. "Business deal," he said, which wasn't entirely a lie. Must be some business." Tina cleaned up the medical supplies. "You should rest here tonight. Moving around will tear the stitches. I can't impose." "You already imposed when you bled on my tomatoes. Take the couch. I'm locking my bedroom door. We'll figure out getting you home tomorrow." Min-jun watched her disappear into her bedroom, heard the lock click, and lay back on the couch that smelled faintly of shea butter and something floral. He should leave. Should call Ji-hoon to extract him. Return to his penthouse fortress. Forget this ever happened. But he didn't. Instead, he lay in a stranger's apartment, feeling something he hadn't experienced in a decade. Genuine curiosity about another human being. This fearless Nigerian woman, with her sharp tongue and gentle hands, had done something impossible. She'd made him want to stay. What neither of them knew was that this single night would ignite an obsession that would consume them both. Could Tina remain ignorant of Min-jun's true identity? And when she discovered the truth, would she run, or would she stay? Min-jun left at dawn with a phone number he'd programmed into Tina's phone while she slept, and a promise to compensate her for the medical services. Tina woke to find him gone, the couch neatly made, and a stack of cash on her coffee table that made her eyes widen. Dramatic much? She muttered, counting it. 10,000,001 for basic first aid. Either he was genuinely grateful or genuinely stupid with money. She expected never to see him again. Rich men who got stabbed in gang fights didn't typically maintain friendships with boutique owners in Itaewon. She was wrong. 3 days later, Minjun walked into Afro Soul Boutique during the afternoon lull, looking nothing like the bleeding man from her rooftop. Now, he wore a perfectly tailored suit, his hair styled with calculated precision, moving with the kind of predatory grace that made Tina's assistant, Soo Min, actually gasp. "Mr. Lee," Tina said, surprised. "Shoulder healing well? Thanks to your skilled hands." His eyes scanned the boutique with genuine interest. The Ankara fabric displays, the Korean-African fusion designs, the jewelry from Lagos artisans. Impressive operation? We do all right. Can I help you with something? Minjun picked up a tie with Ankara print detailing. This is interesting. That's Korean silk with Nigerian Ankara patterns. We collaborate with tailors in both Lagos and Seoul. Popular with men who want to stand out. I'll take 5, Tina blinked. 5 ties? Different patterns. My associates appreciate distinctive gifts. She wrapped them with growing suspicion. 500,001 for ties felt less like shopping and more like an excuse. But she wasn't about to turn down a sale. Come back any time, she said as he left. He came back 2 days later for a women's scarf, for my sister. Minjun didn't have a sister. 4 days after that for a dress shirt. Business meeting, he owned 200 shirts. 3 days later for art prints from a Nigerian artist Tina showcased. By the 4th visit, Tina confronted him directly. Why are you really here? Because I know you don't need this many Ankara print pocket squares. Minjun stood in her boutique at 6 p.m. on a Wednesday, the last customer gone, and for once allowed his mask to slip. I don't know, he admitted. I should stay away from you. It would be safer for both of us. But I find myself drawn. Drawn to what? Overpriced fashion accessories? To you. The words hung between them, honest and dangerous. You treated me like a person, not a... He stopped himself. You're interesting. I'm interesting. Tina crossed her arms. That's your big confession? Mr. Lee, I don't know what your business is, and frankly, I don't want to. But whatever this is, these visits, the excessive shopping, it needs a purpose beyond you being drawn. What if I asked you to dinner? Then I'd say you're either very brave or very stupid. She used his own words back at him, and his lips curved. I thought Nigerians don't do stupid. We don't. That's why I'm saying no. But her smile softened the rejection. However, if you happen to be in the neighborhood when I close at 8 p.m. and walk to the Pojangmacha cart for dinner, I can't control who else eats there. It was an opening, a careful, controlled opening that gave her plausible deniability and him an invitation. Minjun took it. That night, sitting at a street food cart eating tteokbokki and fried mandu, they talked, really talked. About Seoul, about Lagos, about building businesses, about being outsiders in different ways. Tina spoke about being a black woman in Korea, the stares and questions and occasional prejudice balanced against unexpected kindness. Minjun spoke carefully about his business, vague references to import-export and real estate that Tina suspected were euphemisms but didn't push. You're careful with your words, she observed. I'm careful with everything. Sounds exhausting. It is. He looked at her, really looked at her, in a way that made her breath catch. Less so with you. Over the next 2 weeks, their accidental meetings became routine. The Pojang Matcha at 8 p.m. Weekend walks along the Han River. Once, improbably, a Noribang session where Tina discovered Min Jun had a surprisingly good voice and absolutely no rhythm. "You're a terrible dancer," she laughed as he attempted to follow a K-pop choreography. "I'm a businessman, not an idol." What kind of business requires knowing how to kill a man silently, but not how to do the Gangnam-style dance? The question was joking, but Min Jun's expression shuddered. "Tina, it's fine. I don't need to know." But she did wonder. Wondered about the expensive cars that sometimes waited for him, the men in suits who kept a careful distance, the way people seemed to recognize him and immediately find excuses to be elsewhere. The truth arrived violently on a Tuesday evening. Tina was closing the boutique when 3 men entered. She immediately recognized trouble, the swagger, the predatory assessment, the way they spread out to block exits. "We're closed," she said firmly, her hand sliding toward the panic button under the counter. "We're not here to shop," the leader said in Korean, his eyes cold. "We're here about your boyfriend." "I don't have a boyfriend. Min Jun Lee, the Ice King. He's been visiting your shop. People notice." Ice King? The nickname meant nothing to Tina, but the menace in their voices did. "I don't know what you're talking about." "He's just a customer." "Just a customer," the man laughed. "Lady, do you have any idea who you're playing with? Min Jun Lee runs half the underworld in Gangnam. Drugs, gambling, protection rackets. He's built an empire on fear. And you're telling me he's just a customer?" The words hit Tina like physical blows. Underworld. Empire. Protection rackets. This wasn't import-export. This was exactly what she'd feared. "Get out of my shop. We are delivering a message. Tell the Ice King that the Choi family doesn't appreciate him encroaching on our territory. And tell him that his new girlfriend makes a tempting target." The threat was clear. Before Tina could respond, the boutique door opened and Min Jun walked in. The transformation was instant and terrifying. Gone was the man who'd struggled with K-pop choreography. This Min Jun moved like violence incarnate, crossing the space with predatory speed. He had the lead man by the throat before anyone could react. "You came into her shop." His voice was dead calm, which somehow made it more frightening. "You threatened her. Give me one reason I shouldn't kill you right here." Boss Choi sent us just a message. The message is received. Here's mine. Anyone who touches her, looks at her wrong, even thinks about her, dies screaming. Understood?" The men fled the moment Min Jun released them. Tina stood frozen behind the counter, adrenaline and shock warring in her system. "What the hell was that?" Min Jun turned to face her, and she saw it now, the carefully controlled violence, the predatory stillness, the absolute certainty in his eyes. "I can explain." "You're a gangster, a mob boss. The Ice King of Gangnam, or whatever ridiculous title you have." Her voice shook with anger and betrayal. "You've been coming to my shop, eating street food with me, making me think—" She stopped. "Were you using me? Some kind of game?" "No." The word came out fierce. "Never. What we have is real. We don't have anything. You lied to me. I omitted. There's a difference." "Not to me, there isn't." Tina felt tears threatening and hated them. "You need to leave, and don't come back." Min Jun stood motionless for a long moment, something like pain crossing his face. Then he nodded once and walked to the door. He paused at the threshold. "Those men won't bother you again. But Tina, I've made you visible by association. Other families might try to use you against me. Please, Be careful." Then he was gone, leaving Tina alone in her boutique, the reality of what had just happened settling over her like a weight. She'd fallen for a criminal, a man whose world was built on violence, a man who could have her killed, or worse, with a single order. A man she still wanted to see walk through that door. Min-jun stayed away for 5 days. 5 days of Tina jumping at every customer who entered the boutique. 5 days of looking over her shoulder. 5 days of her phone staying silent, despite the part of her that wanted him to call. "You're distracted," Yuki said on Thursday afternoon. Her best friend and business partner was visiting from Tokyo, and she'd immediately noticed Tina's unusual tension. "What happened?" Tina told her everything. The rooftop, the visits, the revelation. Yuki listened without interruption, her expression growing increasingly concerned. "Tina, you need to be careful. Korean organized crime is not something to mess with." "I know. That's why I told him not to come back." "But you want him to." It wasn't a question. Tina sighed. "Is it insane that I do? He's a criminal, Yuki. He probably has blood on his hands. I should be terrified." "But you're not." "No. I'm angry that he lied. But terrified? No." That was the most concerning part. She should be afraid. Instead, she was conflicted. The attack came that night. Tina was walking from the boutique to the subway station, a route she'd taken hundreds of times. She noticed the van following her too late. 2 men grabbed her from behind, one clamping a hand over her mouth, trying to drag her toward the vehicle. Lagos instincts kicked in. Tina stomped hard on one man's instep, drove her elbow into the other's solar plexus, and screamed loud enough to wake the entire district. Her self-defense classes paid off. She bought herself 3 seconds to run. She didn't make it far before they caught her again, but those 3 seconds were enough. A black car screeched to a stop. Min-jun erupted from it like something feral, and what Tina witnessed next would haunt and fascinate her for years. He moved with brutal efficiency. The first attacker went down with a crushed windpipe. The second managed to pull a knife before Min-jun broke his arm, the crack audible over Tina's gasping breaths. The third tried to flee and made it exactly 4 steps before Min-jun brought him down. The entire encounter lasted maybe 30 seconds. 30 seconds of controlled violence that left 3 men unconscious or screaming on the Seoul sidewalk. Then Min-jun turned to Tina, and his expression transformed from monster to concerned in a heartbeat. "Are you hurt?" No, I'm fine. The adrenaline crashed, and Tina found herself shaking uncontrollably. Min-jun caught her before her knees gave out, holding her against his chest, one hand in her hair. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have had protection on you. I should have. You were watching me." "I never stopped." His voice was raw. "I stayed away like you asked, but I made sure you were protected. When the alert came that you were in danger..." He pulled back to look at her, and Tina saw genuine fear in his eyes. "If I'd lost you, you can't have lost me. We're nothing to each other. Remember?" "Liar." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "You've been everything since the moment you threatened me with a shovel." Police sirens wailed in the distance. Min-jun's men materialized from the shadows, efficiently removing the unconscious attackers. Ji-hoon appeared at Min-jun's shoulder. "Boss, we need to move. Police will have questions you don't want to answer." "Tina comes with us." "Min-jun, I can't just..." "They targeted you because of me. They'll try again. You're not safe." His hands framed her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. "Please, let me protect you." Tina should have said no, should have called the police, filed a report, handled this through official channels. But looking at Minjun's desperate expression, feeling the ghost of hands that had tried to drag her into a van, she made a choice. Okay, but we're talking about everything. No more secrets. No more secrets, Minjun agreed, knowing even as he said it that he had secrets that could destroy them both. Minjun's penthouse in Gangnam was exactly what Tina expected. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seoul, minimalist decor in blacks and grays, furniture that cost more than most people's cars. What she didn't expect was the panic room, the weapons locker, or the security system that could probably launch missiles. "This is where you live?" she asked, standing in the center of what felt like a fortress. "This is where I survive." Minjun poured 2 glasses of whiskey, handed her one. "Welcome to my world." Over the next 2 hours, he told her everything. His rise through the Seoul underworld after his father's murder when he was 19. The empire he'd built through strategic violence and calculated alliances, the Choi family's encroachment on his territory, the constant warfare that defined his existence. "I've killed people," he said quietly. "Not unnecessarily, not for pleasure, but I've done it. I won't lie to you about that." "How many?" "Enough that I stopped counting." Tina absorbed this, sipping whiskey that tasted like smoke and money. "Why me? You could have any woman in Seoul. Why the Nigerian boutique owner with a smart mouth and zero connection to your world?" Minjun looked at her for a long moment. "Because you're the only person in 10 years who's treated me like a human being instead of the Ice King. Because you made me laugh. Because when I'm with you, I feel—" He struggled with the words. "I feel." "Feel what?" "Anything. Everything. I've been numb for so long, Tina. Existing, but not living. Then you threatened me with a shovel, and something inside me woke up." The confession hung between them, honest and raw. "I should leave," Tina said without conviction. "I should go back to my boutique, my safe life, my world where people don't get kidnapped on their walk to the subway." "But you won't." "No." She set down her glass. "Because apparently I'm as crazy as you are." The tension that had been building for weeks crystallized in that moment. Minjun crossed to her slowly, giving her every chance to back away. She didn't. "Tell me to stop," he said, his hand cupping her face. "No. Tina, if I start, I won't be able to stop. This isn't casual for me. It can't be. Once I have you, I won't let you go." She looked up at this dangerous man who'd become her obsession and smiled. "Then don't stop." Their first kiss was everything Tina had imagined, and nothing she'd expected. Gentle at first, then desperate. Minjun's careful control shattering against her willingness. He kissed her like she was oxygen, and he'd been drowning, and Tina responded with equal hunger. They made it to his bedroom, clothes leaving a trail across marble floors. And when Minjun warned her one final time, "Last chance to leave," Tina's answer was to pull him down to her. What followed was passionate, consuming, and sealed their fate completely. Afterward, lying in tangled sheets, Minjun traced patterns on her skin. "I'm keeping you," he said quietly. "You understand that, right? You're mine now." "Possessive much?" "Completely. Irrationally. Dangerously." Tina should have been frightened by the intensity in his voice. Instead, she felt cherished, claimed, wanted in a way she'd never experienced. "Then I guess you're mine too," she said. "My monster." "Your monster," Minjun agreed, and kissed her again. But could their love survive in Minjun's violent world? And what would happen when the Choi family learned that the Ice King had found his weakness? Living with Minjun was an education in contradictions. The man who could kill without hesitation made her breakfast with surprising skill. The Ice King of Gangnam argued with her about skincare routines. The feared mafia boss watched Nigerian Nollywood movies with her and provided running commentary that made her laugh until she cried. "This acting is terrible," he observed during a particularly dramatic scene. "That's part of the charm. Don't disrespect Nollywood." They cooked together, his Korean dishes meeting her Nigerian food in culinary fusion. Jollof rice with gochugaru, suya spiced bulgogi. They argued about everything from optimal kimchi fermentation time to whether Fela Kuti or BTS represented better musical innovation. "You did not just compare Fela to BTS," Tina said, horrified. "I'm saying both revolutionized their genres. Get out of this kitchen right now." But the domestic bliss was punctuated by brutal reminders of Minjun's reality. Business calls conducted in cold voices. Ji-hoon arriving with reports about territorial conflicts. The nights Minjun left the penthouse and returned with blood on his clothes and emptiness in his eyes. Those nights, Tina would draw him a bath, sit with him in silence, and slowly watch the humanity return to his face. "I don't deserve you," he said one night, his head in her lap. "Probably not. Good thing I'm not particularly deserving either. You're everything good in the world. I'm a woman who chose to love a gangster. That's not good judgment." "But you do? Love me?" Tina looked down at this powerful, broken man and told the truth. "Yes, God help me, yes." 2 weeks into their cohabitation, the fragile peace shattered. Tina was video calling her Aunt Blessing in Lagos when the alarms sounded. Minjun appeared instantly, gun in hand, his entire demeanor transformed. "Get in the panic room, now." "What's happening?" "The Choi family. They're coming here." Tina heard gunfire, actual gunfire in the hallway. Minjun physically pushed her toward the hidden panic room, and she went. Fear finally overriding stubbornness. From inside the reinforced room she heard everything. Shouted Korean, more gunfire, crashes that suggested furniture being destroyed. The violence lasted maybe 3 minutes. 3 minutes that felt like hours. When the door opened, Minjun stood there streaked with blood, a cut over his eye, his expression still cold and distant. Behind him, Ji-hoon and other men were dragging bodies out of the penthouse. "Are you hurt?" Tina asked, emerging carefully. "Not my blood." His voice was mechanical. "3 men. They're dead. I'm sorry you had to hear that." "Minjun, I need to clean up. We'll talk later." He disappeared into the bathroom, and Tina stood in what had been their sanctuary, now marked by violence, and realized something terrifying. She wasn't horrified. She was angry. She found Minjun in the shower, scrubbing blood from his hands with mechanical precision. Without hesitation, Tina stripped and joined him. "What are you doing?" he asked, startled. "Helping." She took the soap from his shaking hands and began washing the blood away. "You protected me. You protected us." "I'm not afraid of you, Minjun. I'm afraid for you." Something in his carefully controlled facade cracked. He pulled her against him under the hot water, and Tina felt him shaking. "I could lose you," he whispered into her wet hair. "Every day I could lose you because of what I am." "Then maybe we change what you are." "It's not that simple." "Nothing about us is simple." Tina pulled back to look at him. "But I'm not going anywhere. You warned me. If you started, you wouldn't stop." Well, guess what? Neither will I. Minjun kissed her then, desperate and grateful and consuming. And afterward, as they lay in bed, he told her something he'd never told another soul. I haven't felt real emotion in 10 years. Not since my father died. I've been operating on cold logic and colder violence, and I thought that's who I was. Who I'd always be. He traced her face. Then you happened. You make me feel again. It's terrifying. Feeling is terrifying, Tina agreed. But it's better than the alternative. Is it? Sometimes I think the alternative was safer. For both of us. Safe is boring. I didn't fall in love with safe. That night, they both understood that their love had become something dangerous, all-consuming, and impossible to walk away from. The Choi family's attack on the penthouse was only the beginning. Over the next week, the conflict escalated into open warfare. Minjun's warehouses were hit. His legitimate businesses were vandalized. 3 of his men were killed in coordinated attacks. Tina watched Minjun transform from the man who argued about Nollywood movies into something colder, more calculating, infinitely more dangerous. He spent hours in his study with Ji-hoon and his underbosses, planning a response. "You're going to war," Tina said on the 8th night, standing in his study doorway. "I'm ending a war." Minjun didn't look up from the documents. "The Choi family thinks they can challenge me because I've gone soft. Because of you. They're wrong. Minjun, don't do something you'll regret. I won't regret protecting you." Finally, he looked at her, and the intensity in his eyes stole her breath. "They targeted you specifically. Yesterday's attack on the boutique, that was meant to draw me out. They're using you as bait. So yes, I'm going to war. And I'm going to end them. At what cost? Any cost necessary." He left that night dressed in black, surrounded by armed men, and Tina felt genuine terror for the first time since this started. Not fear of Minjun, but fear for him. The next 14 hours were the longest of Tina's life. She stayed in the penthouse under heavy guard, Ji-hoon's second-in-command providing sparse updates. "Boss is at the Choi warehouse. Resistance encountered. Situation contained." The clinical language couldn't hide the reality. Minjun was killing people, multiple people, in a coordinated assault that would reshape Seoul's underworld. He returned at dawn. Tina was sitting in the dark living room when he entered, and the sight of him stopped her heart. Blood covered his shirt, splattered on his face, stained his hands. His eyes were distant, cold. The Ice King fully emerged. "How many?" she asked quietly. 15. His voice was emotionless. "Including Daejung Choi. The family is destroyed. The territory is mine. You're safe." "Minjun, I need to clean up." He moved toward the bathroom like a ghost. Tina followed him, watching as he stripped with mechanical precision, dropping blood-soaked clothes in a heap. In the shower, he stood under scalding water, scrubbing his skin raw, and Tina realized he was trying to wash away more than blood. She stripped and joined him again, ignoring his startled protest, and took the soap from his trembling hands. "Let me," she said simply. She washed him carefully, methodically, removing the physical evidence of violence, while knowing the psychological stains went much deeper. Minjun stood motionless, letting her care for him, and gradually his breathing steadied. "I'm a monster," he whispered. "You should be terrified of me." "You're my monster," Tina corrected, tilting his face to look at her. "You did this to protect me. I'm not going to punish you for it. 15 people are dead because of me. 15 people who tried to kill you, kill me. She kissed him gently. I'm not naive, Min-jun. I know what you are. I've known since the beginning, and I'm choosing you anyway. Something broke in Min-jun then. His careful control, his emotional distance, the wall he'd built to survive his violent world. He pulled Tina against him, holding her like she was the only solid thing in his universe, and shook with silent sobs. I love you, he said into her wet hair. I love you so much, it terrifies me. If anything happened to you, nothing will happen to me. You won't let it. She pulled back to meet his eyes. But Min-jun, you need to understand something. I'm not a victim to be protected. I'm your partner. That means I'm all in, for better or worse. The good and the horrific. You don't get to carry this alone anymore. You deserve better than this, better than me. Stop telling me what I deserve. I deserve what I choose, and I choose you. They made love in the shower, desperate and raw, Min-jun pouring everything he felt into touch and breath, and whispered confessions. Afterward, wrapped in towels, they sat on his bed, and Tina made a decision. Marry me, she said. Min-jun's eyes widened. What? You heard me. Marry me. Make this official, because I'm not going anywhere, and I want the entire world to know it. Tina, being married to me makes you an even bigger target. Being with you at all makes me a target. At least as your wife, I have legal rights to visit if you get arrested, make medical decisions if you get hurt, and inherit your empire if you die. She smiled wryly. Also, I love you, and I want to. Min-jun stared at her, this extraordinary woman who'd walked into his violent world and refused to run, who'd seen him at his most monstrous and chosen him anyway. Yes, he breathed. Yes, I'll marry you. They wed 3 days later in a private ceremony with only Ji-hoon and Yuki as witnesses. The judge asked no questions about the rush or the obvious security presence. Money and power bought discretion. When Min-jun slipped the ring on Tina's finger, he whispered, You're mine, legally, publicly, irrevocably. And you're mine, Tina replied, my monster, forever. But their happiness was short-lived, because outside the chapel, a black car waited, and in it sat Nikolai Volkov, whose arrival would reveal that Min-jun's past held secrets that could destroy everything they'd built. The honeymoon lasted exactly 48 hours before reality intruded in the form of a man who walked into Afro Soul Boutique with the confidence of someone who knew he was untouchable. Nikolai Volkov was Russian, well-dressed, and carried himself with the kind of casual menace Tina had learned to recognize. He browsed her displays with apparent interest before finally addressing her in accented but fluent English. Mrs. Lee, or do you prefer Mrs. Min-jun? Korean naming conventions confuse me. Tina's hand moved to the panic button under her counter, the new one Min-jun had installed after the Choi family's destruction. Can I help you? I believe you can. Nikolai pulled out a photograph, slid it across the counter. It showed a younger Min-jun, maybe 25, standing with several men Tina didn't recognize. Your husband stole something from my organization 5 years ago. Something valuable. I don't know what you're talking about. Intelligence files. Documents that could destroy several very powerful people across 3 countries. Your husband acquired them during a disagreement in Moscow. Nikolai's smile didn't reach his eyes. He's refused every offer to return them, every threat, but I think you might be more persuasive. You're threatening me? I'm informing you. The Bratva wants what's ours. Your husband has 1 week to return the files. or we'll take something he values instead." His eyes flicked meaningfully to Tina. "I hear congratulations are in order on your recent marriage. How tragic it would be if his new bride met an unfortunate accident." Tina wanted to scream, wanted to hit him, but years of navigating difficult situations kept her voice steady. "Get out of my shop." "1 week, Mrs. Lee." Nikolai left, leaving the photograph behind. Tina immediately called Min Jun. He arrived 20 minutes later, with enough security to stage a small coup, his face dark with fury when she explained. "The Russians," he said quietly, staring at the photograph. "I was hoping they'd forgotten." "What files, Min Jun? What did you steal?" He sat heavily, suddenly looking exhausted. 5 years ago, I was working a deal in Moscow. It went bad. The Russian I was negotiating with tried to kill me, steal my shipment, and frame me for his own organization's theft. I survived, killed him, and took his insurance policy, files documenting every Bratva operation in Eastern Europe. Names, locations, payoffs, everything. Why keep them? Protection. If the Bratva ever came after me, I could release the files. It's kept an uneasy peace for years." He looked at her. "Until now. Until you. They're using me to force your hand." Yes, Tina absorbed this. Another threat, another complication in the dangerous life she'd chosen. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to end this." Min Jun's voice turned cold. "Permanently." "Min Jun." "No." He stood, pulling her into his arms. "I've lost too much already. My father, my innocence, my humanity. I'm not losing you. Not to the Shwa, not to the Russians, not to anyone. So what's the plan? I give them the files, but not before I make copies and arrange for their automatic release if anything happens to either of us. Mutually assured destruction. They can't touch you without destroying themselves. That's your plan? Nuclear deterrence? It's the only language they understand." Over the next 5 days, Min Jun orchestrated an intricate dance of threats, negotiations, and careful documentation. Tina watched him work with fascinated horror. This was the strategist who'd built an empire, the cold calculator who'd survived a decade in Seoul's underworld. The exchange happened on a rainy Friday at a neutral location, an abandoned warehouse because apparently gangsters were predictable. Min Jun brought Ji-hoon and 10 armed men. The Russians brought comparable force. Nikolai was there, professional and cold. "The files," he demanded. "The files, the copies, and the dead man's switch," Min Jun agreed. "In exchange for your permanent withdrawal from Korean territory and a blood oath that my wife is untouchable." "You would trade valuable intelligence for a woman?" "I would burn the world for her. Don't test me." The exchange was made. Documents transferred, oaths sworn in Russian and Korean. Nikolai studied Min Jun one final time. "You've gone soft, Ice King. Love makes men weak." "No," Min Jun replied quietly. "Love makes men dangerous, because now I have something worth killing for." They left without incident. The Russian threat neutralized through strategic surrender and mutual self-interest. Min Jun returned to the penthouse where Tina was waiting, pulled her into his arms and held her for a long time without speaking. "It's done," he finally said. "You're safe." "We're safe," Tina corrected. "Because we're in this together." That night, as they lay in bed, Min Jun's hand drifted to Tina's stomach in a gesture that had become habitual over the past week. "There's something I need to tell you," Tina said quietly. "What?" "I'm pregnant." Minjun froze. What? 6 weeks. I found out yesterday but didn't want to tell you until the Russian situation was resolved. She looked at him nervously. I know we haven't discussed children, and with your lifestyle. Minjun kissed her, deep and thorough, then pulled back with tears in his eyes. We're having a baby? Yes. I'm going to be a father? Yes. Are you? Is this okay? Okay? Minjun laughed, the sound rusty but genuine. Tina, you've given me everything. You made me human again, made me feel, made me want to be better, and now you're giving me a family? He kissed her again. It's more than okay. It's everything. Our child will grow up in a complicated world. Our child will grow up knowing they're loved absolutely, that they're protected, that their mother is the strongest woman alive, and their father would burn soul to keep them safe. That's not a normal childhood. We're not normal people. Tina laughed, leaning into his embrace. No, we're definitely not. 6 months later, Tina gave birth to a daughter they named Grace, a name that represented hope for something better than the violence that had defined their beginning. Minjun held his daughter with shaking hands. This tiny person who represented everything good he'd thought himself incapable of creating. She's perfect, he whispered. She's ours, Tina corrected, watching her dangerous husband transform into a gentle father. The boutique thrived. Minjun gradually transitioned his operations to more legitimate businesses. The Russian Bratva kept their distance. The Choi territory was absorbed and redistributed, and Seoul's underworld learned a new rule. The Ice King had melted for one woman, and anyone who threatened his family would face something far worse than the cold, calculating gangster they'd feared. They'd face a man with something to lose, and therefore, everything to fight for. Standing on their penthouse balcony one evening, Grace sleeping peacefully inside, Tina leaned against Minjun and smiled. We're not normal, she observed. Never were. But we're happy. Impossibly, irrationally happy. Minjun kissed her temple. Thank you. For what? For threatening me with a shovel. For not running when you learned the truth. For choosing me when you should have chosen safety. For making me human again. You were always human, Minjun. You just needed someone to remind you. They called it obsession. They called it dangerous. They called it impossible. Tina called it love. And as she stood with her monster-turned husband, their daughter sleeping nearby, Seoul's glittering lights spread before them. She knew she'd never been more free. Did this dangerous romance steal your heart? Subscribe now for more stories where love conquers darkness, where obsession becomes devotion, and where the most dangerous men fall the hardest. Hit that notification bell. You won't want to miss what happens when the Bratva returns with a new demand.